everybody, and welcome to Money Man. I've got James Dalton and Mark Keohane. We were going to chat about the captains, and maybe we can still do that, but I think in light of the news of James Small's death, maybe we share some stories about James. I'm sure that you've got some, 47 tests, 20 tries. To me, when I came to South Africa, was in '96, so that was probably the end of, coming towards the end of James's career. I think '92 to '98 was probably his halcyon days. And the thing that strikes that stands out for me is the '95 World Cup, and there was an image being spread around the UK tabloids of James Small, Joubert, and Joost, the three of them running. And I think they had, they could have been cast in
one of the Springbok training camps.
Yeah, and all three of them could have been in the movie 300. I mean, the bodies on those. I was working in London. There was a lot of South African women there that were swooning over that picture. And for me, when I think of James Small, a few things stick to mind as well. That come to mind: the game against Lomo, the James Dean type bad boy persona that he very broody. But I didn't know him.
So James was certainly an incredibly colourful character for a lot of reasons. He was an amazing teammate. He was loyal to the Springbok brand beyond belief.
What made him amazing?
He's I hate this word, but his passion for the Springbok team and for all his teammates. He was always very caring, very conscious of a team environment. I suppose, like pretty much with myself, we sometimes let our emotions get the better of us. So, there was also the side of James where his emotions would also, almost keep you a bit aloof and a bit distant of him. But I think he will, and he is one of the icons of Springbok rugby, and certainly one of the personalities. I always affectionately remember, him calling everybody Bushy. And then towards when I saw him at the reunion, he started calling everyone my king, So it's just those unique expressions that are synonymous with the personality. It's very sad, for me. The sad part is, for his kids, his young kids that are left behind, and that was so immediate, certainly one of the best Springboks I've had the privilege of playing with.
Well said, James. Well said. Mark, do you have any?
Yeah, look, the '92 Currie Cup final when I first met him, when I was covering the Lions, and we had a very love-hate relationship throughout. I think as he did with most of the media, I think
you've had that.
I have had that with most players as well. But
we've all had that.
But the kind of thing that he was very kind-hearted and kind-spirited, but you never knew which one you were going to get. And an example being in '96 when we were in tour in Buenos Aires. He could never sleep before a test match, and he tried to explain to Markroff that he just needs to be in a nightclub. He's not going to be drinking, so he's going out with the media. Okay, so they gave him that allowance, and he came out with us, and he just drank orange juice and spoke crap to us, and we were in the toilets, and then we're back out on the dance floor, and you get that connection. You've really bonded with someone, and the next day he doesn't greet you in the lift.
He's forgot to do your
He just looks at you like, what was that about? So one of the better UK writers posted something on Twitter to say the last time he ever played in England for the Springboks, James made the cover of their newspaper, and it was one of his modelling shoots with Christina Storm, the mother of his oldest, and and they were talking about this hard rugby player, so soft on the inside, that kind of thing. So he did transcend different boundaries, and he spoke to a male audience, and he spoke to a female audience, and he spoke to those youngsters who felt that they could be heroes, and he kind of boxed above his side.
You talk about on the field things. So I remember the then Transvaal playing against Natal, and where I spent most of my career was on the wing, apart from when I was forced to scrum. And I got the ball on the wing and I sidestepped.
Well, you were quite the winger, weren't you?
Yeah. So I sidestepped Jeremy Thompson, Joubert and James. And when I scored under the poles, I said to him, listen, must I buy you a ticket to come back in the stadium because you've overrun me so badly. And then Joppie Mulder and I, we had quite an intense rivalry. James was, you could get under your skin on the field, And we targeted him the one time at Ellis Park. Yeah. And it brings back you could give and get. You even watched the highlights of the World Cup final last night. I mean, do you know how many offsides there were? You know how many red cards there would be with those rules of the olden days? So, as Mark put it earlier, it's certainly an era that has come and gone. But then again, everything changes and we've got to accept change, sometimes for the better or not.
What was it like to play against him, James? I know you touched on it.
You had to watch him at all times. Yeah. He was a tenacious and a good finisher. That's what made him unique. And he had overall skill. He could kick, he could catch, he could step, he had pace. Now and again a bit scared, but
but you talk about his character, and then Frank Bunce, the former All Black centre, said if you played against South Africa, but if you played against James Small, you had to earn the right to score. You had to earn the right to make meters, because he's going to give it everything for 80 minutes and then you're going to have a drink with him, okay? Which he was always in the pub first with them. And he said a couple of years ago, he was coaching down in Portugal somewhere, and James arrived there on holiday and they spent a week together and was promoting the game. And then they ended up playing a game that started as a game of touch against the locals, and he said it ended up in a big fist fight because he said they knew who James Small was and they were antagonizing him, and then he said to Frank Bunce, it's happened once, it's okay. It's happened twice, I'm not happy. He said, not a third time. And then he just clocked them, okay? And those are the stories that were synonymous with him, that he was so competitive on the field, and yet those complexities came through off the field as well. And it's a funny moment, but it kind of tells a lot about his character. Western Province played against Boland in '96 in a night series final at Newlands. And Harry Floom was the coach, and he was James Small's boy. And Alan Solomons and James Small didn't really get on. And there had been an
Why was that?
I think he just thought rebel from the north that comes to Cape Town. It's Christian Stewart's kind of area, and so they didn't quite get on. And Christian was playing centre, and James Small was playing wing. And then at one stage, there's this. Christian tells the story. There's all this abuse flying, and the Boland winner says, "What?" Christian says, "Don't worry about it. He's talking to me, not you." And then Fritz van Heerden, who's the captain of that side, got into an argument with him on the field, and apparently shook him up a bit. And then at halftime, he decided he's not playing the second half. The final's over for him, and so he was outside the change room, boots off, socks off, and he wasn't going to even go and watch the second half. The province team came out, and about 2 minutes into the second half, one of the province players had to come back in. And he said only if Fritz van Heerden apologizes to him when he comes back on the field. They had to give him a mock apology to get him back on for the last 35 minutes. And then he came tearing out there and kind of just put it all on the line again. And I remember
a complex character.
Yes, I remember when Solly, also the last match he ever played for the Western Stormers was against the Lions up at Ellis Park. And Solly questioned his hunger at that stage, or did he want to play? And he was bleeding near the end of that game, and he had one of those headbands that just goes everywhere, and he just took the jersey and he pulled the headband up, and he's like, what do you think now? You just imagine what is going to go on in that change room.
Shame, when we had our 10-year reunion, things that make me think fondly of him, is we were all given these signature World Cup rings made by Jenna Clifford. Yeah. And a lot of us, or most of us, have actually kept them and put them in a safe and don't wear them or seldom wear them. And James would wear this ring proudly, religiously, like as a permanent accessory to his personality, and that again sums up that he was proud of his achievements, and rightly so. He was proud of the Springboks, and proud of his generation that he was massively a big participant in.
But on that, Kev,
well, sorry, Mark. He was certainly iconic.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why reading a lot of the comments on SA Rugby magazine and even on my stuff, my platforms, I'm reading a lot of how much of an impact he had on people, and people, he was people's favorite player, and he really epitomized.
Well, for me, you look at that World Cup final, which pretty much cast a lot of the players and the personalities in stone. Excuse me. And if you go and look at that game as a whole, the impact that James had on that game, especially defensively against Lomu, I mean, he really manned up that day. And
well, I think he says it he said to Lomo, I'm only remembered because of that game, which is I think being very humble, because he's certainly remembered for more in that game. But he is remembered a lot for that game and what winning the World Cup meant to South Africans in '95. And it was the perfect Cinderella story. In fact, Invictus, the movie.
I think on that score, and it ties in with the troubles and the battles that he had in the later years. He was such a crowd favorite, and he'd be on the field for hours after the game signing. He was particularly good with the young kids. It's like if a kid was there to support him, he gave the kid everything. If you had a hotel, he would always be around the people who came to the hotel, give autographs, kind of make an effort with them. Yeah. And he attempted suicide in 2001, and one of the more endearing tributes that I read this morning was. One of the Twitter handles, it's Rugby, who I follow religiously, and they had a close connection. So I don't even know who this Rugby is, but he said one of the most beautiful stories James told him at the time. He said he had attempted to take his life. He had to kind of just get out of the media. He was not being able to cope with feeling that he was no one in the country anymore. People had forgotten him.
I mean, if someone, the way you're describing James, as someone that was so into the game and lived the game and spent so much time giving to the game, it must have been quite an adjustment after the game.
Yeah, and then he said he eventually retreated to his mom. No one knew he was there and that, and then they got a phone call in 2001, and the mom said it's from the president's office, and he said put it down. It's a prank call, and they phoned back. President Mandela wants to speak to him, and he had read the stuff in the media, and he had phoned him and said, "What's going on with your life? Why do you want to take your life?" And he explained to him that he was lost. He had no identity, and he felt that he would be forgotten and had been forgotten. And he said, Madiba then said to him, I've also had that feeling when I was in jail for 27 years. I also thought people had forgotten and left me. And he said that's when he just realized, like, you owe yourself and the country so much. And then President Mandela had said to him, according to, as the script goes, that he had said to him, you will always be remembered for what you did in '95, a hero, and you owe that to the country to continue to give back, and you will never be forgotten. And he said when he put into context what he was feeling and what President Mandela had gone through, his kind of life changed there and then. It's like he actually has something. He's got a kid at that stage. There was so much that just getting that reinforcement from a person of the stature of Mandela to say, well, I think you will always be remembered. So it's very touching kind of. But also shows you the complexities of the man, the strong, secure guy on the field, but off the field so riddled with so many insecurities.
But I think that's one thing people don't understand is, and I've often touched on this, it's almost a glorified life. You think, playing professional sports just sets you apart from the rest. It doesn't actually, because when I'm playing rugby, I'm James Dalton, the rugby player. Now stop. Now I'm just James, ordinary James, and you lose. Sometimes you lose your path.
Well, when your identity is built so much on, and unlike any other country I have ever seen, the rugby players are pampered in this country, and by that I mean that they're spoiled. They start, agents run around getting boots for them and stuff like that. A lot of them are, not all of them, but I imagine it'd be hard to maintain a level of humility. And not, you can see how people would lose yourself.
Now got to look for your own paycheck every month. It's like put it in context. It's so matriculating. Now every morning, I wake up and I'm going to my school. Now you stop at 35 and you wake up and you say, but where am I going today? Where am I going this morning? So you lost. And I think sorry, Mark. And there's the thing about the book that was written on the 10,000 hours of business. We've got 10,000 hours in the rugby field. Now I'm entering a business world at 35, 36 with 0 hours under my belt. Yeah. And that's where you, like the hamster on the wheel. Everyone wants to engage you, socialize, talk to you, but you're not making money.
Did you have a hard time, James, adjusting to life off the field?
Yeah, you've a loss of identity and existence. I
didn't want to get into this stuff. But I think it's important that maybe we touch on it.
Well, it's a reality, and kids must know that. That sport is not all. Sport is amazing. Sport is probably the best thing for any child or any adult, for that matter, to participate in. But the realities around it are quite scary after the career. And you can see it. I mean, there's been documentaries done on professional sportsmen in the United States. And the statistics were horrific, like up to 75%, 80% of them were bankrupt in their mid-40s.
Yeah, no, and one of the guys that was at this course in Boston that I took, Kevin Love, was talking about mental health and dealing with because it's a real
Absolutely.
thing. But being the big, strong guy on the rugby field, you're not supposed to. That's not supposed to affect you.
You're
right?
not meant to be that person in public.
Yeah.
Because when you're that person in public, people frown upon it.
Yeah, no one wants to talk about it.
I think also on that score, if you take especially Springbok rugby players in this country, they are fated like. I don't even think the All Blacks in New Zealand are as fated as the Springboks are in this country.
Oh, no way, Mark. 4 million page engagements on Facebook on SA Rugby magazine last month. 4 million. I've never seen a fan base like this in any country.
But what happens is, so James plays for 7 years, and it's just everywhere he goes, he doesn't queue. Everyone wants to pay for him. They want pictures.
I just came downstairs came for coffee. I couldn't get one because everybody was posing with the bullet.
But we also tend to quickly forget yesterday's heroes. And I wrote a column 2 weeks ago on the week of the 24th of June, 95. And never forget those Rainbow Warriors and what they achieved that day. Forget the administration and how they bungled it after the World Cup in terms of transformation of that. We are so reluctant to look back, 2007, 95, 98, and say, what a great team, celebrate them, keep them involved somehow in the social consciousness. We tend to just forget them, and they feel that. And I think that's where James Small felt that identity.
Well, Mark, if you look at any American sports team, let's just say the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm a big fan, they have all the ex-Leafs involved. They've always got ex-Leafs, legends at games and all this stuff. And the administration here is not good at that. They're not good at many things. But what amazes me more is the fans in this country. Because after 95, it was such a euphoric wave that this country was on. And then 99, and then we're never winning another World Cup. The situation with quotas and all, and then of course they win in 2007, and now it's again we're never going to win another World Cup. But
on that note, I find our problem. This is just my opinion. I find our problem in our sport environments is that you have administrators that overstay their welcome. So they eventually start pushing and forcing their identity and their personalities on an environment instead of cleaning it up. I mean, you even look at the British Premier League. You'll watch a game on TV and you'll see the ex-former players in the stands or in the box. Yeah, you don't even get offered a ticket. You've actually got to go buy your own ticket.
Well, I remember hosting Percy on his 100th, Percy's parents on his 100 tests because they didn't even have tickets for his parents.
It's quite sad that you almost take and use these players and their talents and abilities, and you don't even for one stage ask them. A player if he's doing well or if there's problems. They don't even engage you on those levels. They don't even worry about you. It's like right next, next man for a shave.
Yeah, next man for a shave. Yeah, no, that's a good point, James. It's like we use these guys for a limited period and then discard them, and they have so much more to offer.
Absolutely. I mean, they can add so much value to youngsters, to be inspiration, role models, provided it's handled in the correct manner. I mean, you want to, every dad says to his kid, "Hey, do you know who that is? That's a former Springbok rugby player," wanting his kid to be inspired by the comments like that. But when you abandon people, and not that at the end of the day you've all got to move on with your life. Yeah. But there are significant impacting scenarios that can be handled a little bit better. And the one thing I need to touch on is that movie Concussion with Will Smith.
Yes, good movie.
And watching a documentary recently on CNN.
And it's a true story.
Yeah, and watching what actually came out of that, what they said is the guys with a lot of head impact injuries, eventually either develop this brain disease, and what they do is they develop certain characteristic flaws in drug addiction, alcoholism, narcissistic
and it's to magnetize the pain.
There we go, and it's not something you can say, well, I can identify where it comes from. It's just through what has what
happened.
you've experienced over your rugby playing career.
Well, you know, James, a lot of guys, I know the NFL, that movie was great, and it was a true story, and it just an indictment on the way the NFL has handled post-concussion syndrome. But a lot of hockey players at the time, not a lot, but I mean the guys that were the bruisers and the scrappers on the team, a lot of those guys were not. There was about 5 or 6 that committed suicide a while ago, but they would all shoot themselves in the heart, or hang themselves to preserve their brain and donate that to.
It's very sad.
It's poignant. I mean, when you look at, so yeah, I mean, mental health is a real issue in collision sports, contact sports, and I think rugby's not a contact sport anymore. It's a collision sport. It's even worse. You're getting.
I mean, my day when you played and you got a bump on the head, they would pour water over you, and that was your concussion test.
Well,
and then you'd carry on playing. The following weekend, you're back on the field. Meanwhile, you've got a swollen brain. You've got more chance of being easily concussed again. And then, like I say, no wonder some of us lose our way in our later
But back
years.
in the day when James and them were in his prime, and the rugby those days, you never came off. The only way you could get a guy off was blood. And Ian Mack was famous for needing to get a guy off. He would just tell the physio, cut him. Like nick him and he's bleeding off, and then he will decide whether he gets back on the field. Okay, so yeah, I mean it's just coming back to James though, and that he had a very colourful tour of New Zealand in 1994 as well, and to kind of just show you the kind of player he was back then. Like John Kerwin was his childhood hero, and he played against him, and then Kerwin never gave him swap jerseys with him after the first test. And I did an interview with him, and he was just horrified that they didn't swap jerseys. And I kind of wrote an article about it, and then Kerwin swapped jerseys with him at the end of the series. But it was that he still had that fan aura around a bloke he was playing against, and he gave it horns in that match. But he was. They loved him over in New Zealand. I think he spoke to all that.
I think they loved him. I think he was liked everywhere because he was such an icon of the game. He was so photogenic. He was a good-looking guy. He was a rebel.
But also, it's to me, different characteristics are to be celebrated and not pigeonholed. And I think the South African media, to a degree, the South African fan base struggled with just accepting him for who he was. And I think he then eventually struggled with that he couldn't just be this guy, have all these complexities, and that defined him from the straight-laced other winner who kind of went to varsity, got married, had the 5 kids and lives on the farm. They both have a place in Springbok rugby, and I think just more and more with him getting older, he fell more out of the limelight and aspired to be back in it in some other guys. And I think just from what I've heard and people who know him very well, that the last few years were a huge battle for him as well. And that's the saddest thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a society issue. It's like sometimes you've got to make peace with certain things. Not everyone's going to like you, and you're not going to like everybody. That's just the reality. But when you're an icon, you can't show your dislike for people or your frustration or your emotions, because it's frowned upon. And in a way, you can understand it. If you want to be good, or you don't want to be good, but if you are good at what you do, yes, then I suppose the behaviour needs to be appropriate. But says myself.
But you talk about that iconic picture of Joubert and Joost and James before the '95 World Cup, where as bullets with the test, Kitch took them in and said, the one thing you're going to be is the most conditioned and fittest team there. But everyone spoke about how ripped they were, and then the Kiwis suggested. Then the Kiwis suggested that maybe it's more than just a diet. And you know what James Small's response was? It's just pup and balls.
Jeez, it was those 300 step-ups we do after training.
That we're on. So, yeah, and he was, I think the key there was when the rivalry he had with John Bentley, okay? And it started when Province played against the Lions, and they brought this rugby league guy in just to counter James Small and work him off the ball and do things. And it's all started within the Province game in front of the grandstand, and he gouged Small. He went in for contact, and the next moment he came out holding his eyes, screaming, because the one thing that James was also prone to was theatrics, okay? Yeah. He could have been a French player as well like that, and he was like, my eyes. I've been gouged. And John Bentley said, it was me, mate, it was me. And then they hunted each other for the 3 tests. So they just went after each other. And at the end of the series, it was beers and hugs and that kind of thing.
You know, you talk about John Bentley now, there's a name that comes back for me. So I've just come back from an injury, a groin injury, and I play for Transvaal against the Bentley. And now instead of just staying on his inside, because I wasn't like in my best condition, I overrun him and he steps me on the inside. I mean, it's like a basic error, like tackling 101. And that same night, I get a phone call from Kitch Christie, and he says to me, Bullet, you're a bit unfit. And I said, yes, coach, I've just started playing again. He's not good enough.
Bentley did score that amazing Friday night against the Lions.
I wasn't the one that missed the tackle.
Shut up, Mark.
That's hilarious. Well, guys, I think there's no point in going in to discuss another topic. I think James Small is big enough to be the only topic being discussed. And what a legend! What a loss for the rugby community and fraternity. I know he'll be missed by many people, and God bless his soul.
Yeah, God bless him and his family, and condolences to everyone close and associated to him.
Yeah, and may his memory be that firebrand rebel on the field, 92 to 98, and the bloke who, when we came back in that first test, dropped the ball close to near the end and blamed himself for that, for the loss, even though New Zealand was way ahead. And the image of him on his haunches in tears, the same image of him just fronting Lombard 95, the kind of antics that he had on the field. So when I think of James Small, that's the image I have of James Small, not a bloke who was troubled in his last few years, approaching 50. And I think if people should celebrate that memory of someone who was very special in a very special time for rugby in South Africa and sport in South Africa.
Well, I think of that song, Billy Joel, Only the Good Die Young, and I'd rather laugh with the sinners and die with the saints. Certainly that epitomizes James Small. What a legend. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming in.